What's up, guys? It is episode 34 of the NS Builders podcast. This week, joining me again, Ken DeCoste. Last week's episode, you left off the podcast wanting to talk about something else.
I did,
what was that?
That is it more valuable to learn a lesson from a mistake or to learn the lesson being taught by someone?
Now, why do you want to talk about that?
I mean, I think everyone's making mistakes, right? So do you feel that you personally... right? Do you personally feel that it is, you retain that mistake, you retain the lesson learned from the mistake, or the lesson learned from being taught better?
I think making the mistake.
Yeah, I would agree. So that's my thought as well. I mean, I think it's similar to the old, like, teach a man to fish, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, they're very different, but at the same time, if someone tells you how to do something without you actually making those mistakes, then you're not going to understand them fully.
Yeah.
Right? You know, it's kind of like, oh, well, don't drive fast. You might get into an accident. Well, you're not going to know until you do.
Can you talk about a specific example in your case, like that you have been taught something and feel as though you didn't learn it as good as if you had done it and made the mistake yourself? Or maybe vice versa. I mean,
nothing's coming to mind. There have been, several mistakes that I've made here recently. I guess more so we can kind of touch upon last week's, right? And the whole quick and dirty. And that, while it wasn't a mistake in the sense of fabricating something or working on something that you screwed up on, and a mistake in that sense, it's a mistake on a much larger scale where we didn't dedicate the time to it. And on the next one, you know what? We're going to think twice, and we're going to dig a little deeper into what it is that we're actually going to be fabricating, not a quick and dirty small cabinet just for storage. We'll give it more thought and consideration to make sure that we are hitting both the client's expectations as well as our own expectations.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me because, I feel like it goes back to even being in school, right? Where it's like, are you a visual learner,
kinetic?
Is that one?
Kinesthetic?
I was going to just kind of skip over that. But yeah, are you better at, doing, basically being in the moment and actually executing and doing something? We got Ian showing up in the background. Ian! Have a good day.
Later.
But that's how it always was for me, is like I was much better at actually doing it. It's like physics. Actually, is a perfect example. I failed miserably in college. I did very poorly on the written exams and reading through the stuff. But in lab, I did great. It was like it made sense. And even after doing the lab, going back to reading it, it's like, yes, that still doesn't really compute. Like, I'm not sure how what I just did over there
works in real life.
Yeah, with that. But I think that's what it relates to, is actually kind of combing through it. And, to elaborate on this, I think this, in speaking specifically to other people in the industry, I think this is really talking about hiring people and creating culture and creating, an environment which people can strive. And this is what people don't value enough, is that actually going through the motion of learning something, is super valuable, where, being told to do something, you almost don't fully understand why.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, I want you. I don't know. I was going to try to make an example. Actually, a great one, Johnny, on the Modern Craftsman podcast, he talked about one of his guys. He was like, I want him to sweep the street up, but I'm not going to tell him to. And and it's kind of one of those things. I guess it's similar, but as I'm saying it out loud, I realized I was like, no, I would have told him. But, the other side of that, I guess not a great example, because ultimately I think that kid probably found out by listening to the podcast.
Right. I was going to say, did Johnny ever tell him?
I don't remember how it ended.
He didn't really learn the lesson either way there.
Yeah. And regardless, I guess what my point is that, going through the motion and messing something up, you realize the outcome,
the severity of that.
Yeah. And it's like, well, if I just said, hey, make sure you mix the epoxy this way, and and then you mix it that way, it's like you'll never know what happens if you mix it wrong.
Exactly. Right. And that's what I think I'm getting at here is that I find that it is more valuable to make that mistake because you don't know. It's like not the fear of unknowing, but you don't know what the other side of that is.
Right.
And the reason I was asking is to see if you felt differently, but of course you don't.
Imagine if I did. Imagine if I was like, no, teaching is the way. And
I'm sure there are people out there.
This would be a way more interesting conversation.
Well, I mean, we'll have to have somebody back then and discuss this further with them.
But it goes two ways. Like you have, there's both, right? But I think that also goes back to the way you teach, in the sense that it's not so much, hey, you're going to do it this way, but getting someone on board as to the process in which something takes is just as important, where it's like, rather than just saying, hey, make sure you mix the epoxy this way.
Right.
It's like, let's stop and hey, so the reason you mix the epoxy this way is because if you don't, it can set off too fast and you can't mix it, or it becomes really brittle over the course of time. Like I know nothing about epoxy. I don't know why I use that as an example.
How many epoxy tables have you done?
None. 0. Oh, that's why you mentioned epoxy tables. And
right. I think it's you have to get them to understand fully what is happening here, like what the whole lesson is, not just dictating what the lesson and the outcomes may or may not be.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk a little bit about your side of NS Builders, the millwork side, and the people that are here. We kind of touched on my role as far as supporting rework, but can
I give you a little update, a follow up to last week? Right, bank your question here.
Numbers, right?
Numbers.
Yeah.
So somebody had asked.
By the way, I know what they are now.
Okay, well, let's see how this compares. Right.
All right.
Somebody had asked me if the numbers were accurate. And I know the number that you threw out, the 150 was. I said we're currently around 6,000 for the rework on those built-ins, expecting it to double. And you said that was more than you had thought. So I ran the numbers. We're at $8,100. So I was quite a ways off on the over-exaggeration.
So we have another $2,000 worth of rework that we did last week last month that doesn't attribute to that job that I need to comb through.
Okay, that's that job. I'm specifically talking about the living room built-ins on our Com Ave job.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I mean, I looked at my rework numbers for last month, and it's a little bit more than 8,100. So I'm wondering what the other 2,000 that we redid. But I'm sitting here talking about it, and as people are listening, I know the things that we had to redo or chose to redo. So I mean, for a month,
And you're sure those are millwork numbers and not?
No, I'm not saying millwork.
Okay.
I'm saying for NS Builders in as a whole, we did about $10,000 worth of.
So you're trying to find where that extra $2,000 is coming from.
I'm figuring it out as I'm talking, but then I'm also computing that.
Well, I got 8,150 is my exact number.
10,000 times 12 months. There's another $120,000. So we got to nip this in the butt. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, or we do more sales and keep that number down. It comes down to a percentage.
All right, back to your question.
What has your role? Like, you started here as a cabinet maker, and it was just you, and now you have a team of 2 other guys with you. So, as a leader, what have you found is the most important thing to really get some of the I don't want to say high level, but like the big conversations that we might have early on as making these decisions, whether it's rework or being more creative or taking a different approach, and communicating that to your team?
I mean, I think that's what it is communication. And that's the biggest thing in getting the team to understand, right? Let's get back to that. Understand why we're doing it. And it's not to kind of, pick on the guys like, oh, you did this wrong or I did this wrong. It's here's why we're doing that, and communicating clearly that thought and how we're going to go about fixing it, right? Because we don't want to just say, hey, we're going to make this again, we're going to do it that way. Have at it. We want to make sure that plan is kind of carried out or sought through into the shop team as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and, furthermore, I think back to one of the examples of doing rework and, having like the team being like going back to me being kind of an asshole, like them thinking like I'm just ripping it out to rip it out for the marketing piece. It's like I remember redoing one of our kitchens, the face frames, and it's like when it came back together and we brought the ovens here and put them in, you know, I made it a point to go out there. I'm like, so what do you guys think? You know? And it was, yeah, this is way better. And it's easy to get it at the end, right? It's easy at the end to be like, yeah, this is definitely better. But it's like in the moment, you know, I think that's something that is really on your plate is like, how do I get these guys to believe that it's the right thing to do? But not only is it the right thing to do, but we should
be striving for those details on the front end on every
like
job.
Almost appreciating it, like appreciating the opportunity to do it again.
And I think they do, right? Because we kind of touched upon it last week too with subs and getting them to kind of get that light bulb to go off, right? And I think it's very similar with the guys on our team. And I think that they're all on the same page for the most part. And there might be a little bit of pushback because, yeah, it sucks to have to rebuild something that you've already, you know, maybe have just completed. So I understand it from that side of it. But you really just got to be kind of clearer, right, with the communication, with the intent. And that starts with me. That starts with you, right? Like, you know, we have to do a better job of communicating those to our teams and setting and managing expectations, which is something that we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's this continual improvement. Like, you're never going to be there, right? And, oh, we're going to be 100% by... Well, when you get to that point, 100% is now changed.
It's
right?
funny. I had a conversation with someone this morning, and that's exactly it. It's, you know, always striving to be better and willing to do that at no expense is almost in some ways can be looked at as a really bad business venture or business path, because if you're always reworking and always being better, you're always spending your profit on trying to improve something where it's like, excuse me, the next time you go to do it, it's like, well, you're trying to make it better again and now you're spending the money. When do you ever get to a point where it's like, this is the best and now I get to reap the benefit of making money on it? And there's like, I think that it's incremental, right? Where in the beginning, it's like you spend a lot of money on redoing things, and then it gets to a point where you do get this stride, and then it's like the focus goes elsewhere into improving something else.
Yeah, but it sounds like that I mean, I don't know who this person is, but like there's a level of complacency there. And I'm not the type, and I don't think you're the type of person that's ever going to become complacent with what we do. And it's not like we're ripping out everything because we know we can do it better. It's you kind of take what you've learned from one project and roll it into the next one. And when you do run into these roadblocks where, okay, the built-ins, let's just keep going with that, right? The built-ins, they didn't hit the mark. There's going to be stuff like that where the call is made to rip it out and do it again. It's not every aspect of every job. It's here and there, and you build what you've learned into the next one so that you're not having to redo everything every time.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the short of it is that we both agree that, you know, learning is more valuable when you kind of go through the motion and screw it up rather than being taught. But I think what we've kind of divulged here is that it really comes down to the way it's taught and really explaining, getting people on the same page rather than, you know, kind of, I guess it goes back to like that meme that's like a boss versus a leader, right? A boss is just going to demand and say this is what needs to be done, where a leader is going to be in the mix of it and be like, this is how we're going to do this. And, you know, and this is a team effort. And that's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, there was an example that happened, an hour ago, if not, where there was a huge miscommunication on my part with the shop team, and there was a mistake made. And it wasn't a very big mistake. Like, you know, the fix was easy, but it came down to me not giving clear enough direction on what needed to be done. All the micro details were there and were clear, but it was kind of like the macro detail that was missing, and that's what got mixed up, and ultimately we had to remake a new piece. Yeah.
This week, we, you know, as we do every week, we release Site Visit on Tuesdays and...
I'm sorry? Oh, no.
You interrupting me? Someone, you know, someone on the podcast said, make sure you put your phone face down. Put your phone down.
Bro, I was reading the notes for you.
Oh, okay.
I'm reading your script.
My script?
You want me to read your line for you?
Yeah. Where's the one that says I'm really handsome?
That got cut.
Dang. So, Site Visit's released on Tuesday. Revealed is released on Wednesday. Tuesday, or one of the questions that came up on this week's episode of Site Visit was the bifold doors. and how are you going to protect those things from swinging into the wall? So how are we going to protect those?
Yeah, so I think that kid actually just reached out to me too. So the bifold door is on an invisible hinge between the two doors, right?
That's the center hinge.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the jam side, so the case side, is just our standard concealed European hinges. So we have a lot of adjustment in those.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, as most of those hinges have restrictor clips that you can put on them to stop them at 90,
Yeah.
we do have an extra wide filler on the hinge side of that cabinet to help prevent that door from hitting the wall, the handle especially, right? Because you have to take into account the projection. It's not just the door. And then you have the angle, which is, and with these hinges is 110 degrees plus the handle. So at 16, 17 inches out, you can imagine that handle's going to hit the wall. So we just pop on a restrictor clip, which stops the door at 86 degrees, keeping it a little bit why is that word escaping me?
I don't know.
Less than 90.
Yeah.
And
and the reason they go 86 is basically to compensate for the flex too, because the door will swing to about a 90 degree,
right?
But then bring it back to 86 because obviously you're dealing with thin metal and wood and things can flex.
Yep, exactly. So in the short of it is there's a restrictor clip on the concealed hinges that will allow that door to stop before it hits the wall.
One of the other questions that came up, and this isn't so much millwork related, but some of the hidden closets in these spaces, the baseboard runs in front of them, and someone commented that the baseboard is going to get damaged over time. So to clarify that detail, we're actually going to be building the inside of that closet floor completely flush with the top of the baseboard, so it all gets painted as one. So yeah, I mean, if someone's dragging a vacuum out, dragging it across that floor over the top of the baseboard, there's a potential that it could get damaged. But I think anyone that's going to be living in this home, especially who we know will be living there, takes care of what is around their surroundings. So I don't think that damage is really necessary. I also want to clear up something. I made a big joke about these light switch covers. And Doug made a great clip where it was, if your electrician doesn't use these covers, then you should find a new electrician. I had a lot of flack for that.
From our electricians or just from electricians?
Yeah, I actually called one of our electricians today who did not do this project, and he gave me some heat for it. And I was like, he was being funny. And it was said in humor. I mean, frankly, it's not the electrician's job. They're not part of the light switch. They're actually, I think, made by a protection company. And at the end of the day, it's not his job to protect them. If anything, it's ours. And we got a lot of great comments. A lot of people were saying that, you could just put in the cheap switches for the time being and then replace them at the very end. I think, which is a great idea. The thing I don't like about that is you're redoing the switches.
It seems like a lot more work than just popping on a
and maybe
color.
in a big job it makes sense because, there's so many and you don't want them to be damaged. This is a relatively small job. And it can go the other way too, where it's like it's a small job, so it wouldn't take that long to swap them. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I was really commending, Brian, who's the electrician on that from Powerhouse, really just commending him for taking the extra step to make sure that they were protected. And by in no means I was looking to rid our electricians or anyone's electricians. And for the few that said that they should, I think one of them said that they should fire me as a builder because I would require that of an electrician. I respect all of that, but it was said in good humor. So I certainly wanted to make sure I addressed that I appreciate all of our trade partners for what they do. I just was simply commending Brian at that particular point.
So shout out to Brian, over at Powerhouse.
Yeah.
Big shout out.
And then, we actually took a ride over to our Cambridge project, got that steel stringer in, which looks awesome. There's a lot of detail in that project, and you're actually working on all the millwork.
Yeah, there's a lot of millwork in that place.
So where are you at? Gus is below the table right now, growling, or dreaming.
Yeah.
So give him a little. So what's going on in your world of millwork with that project?
So like I said, there's a ton of millwork in there. It's separated throughout the entire house. So we've kind of broken it down into rooms or areas, and several of these areas have been approved both by us and the architect. We have complete shop drawings on them, and our shop team has started fabrication. Some of the items are even ready to go to the finisher. We have just gotten back a bunch. There's so many different colors on this job. We've gotten back all the samples. All the paint samples were approved, so we're ready to roll with finish. And there's a few sets of drawings that we're still making revisions to and sending back to the drafters. And then there are several others that we have submitted to the architects for their approval, so we can get fabricated on those. One of the areas of this project is actually two areas, I guess, and they're using Taboo Veneers, which we do a lot of our own hand stitching veneers here in house. We'll even occasionally use just an already stitched sheet veneer. Those are few and far between. But this product, these Taboo Veneers, I think they started off as an engineered veneer.
Yeah.
And they've expanded into, they now offer natural veneers that are dyed and, cut kind of funky. And this one is this like really cool light gray color. And we just got the samples back for the finish on that, and they're looking for a 5% sheen, which is dull.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah.
We were just comparing them to the 30% sheen, and 30% has never looked so glossy.
Yeah, I know.
Next to a 5.
It's funny. We opened it up right before the podcast, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah. So, and it's funny because kind of, looking at those versus the 30 sheen on the paint samples, those look flat. Those look really dull.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to compare the two, the 5% on the Taboo versus the
Well, like you
paint.
said, that this project has a lot of millwork, and it's cool. We're doing a lot of cool details. There's been a lot of thought. We've put, made sure that we've really considered all of these things. I think, this is going to be this is the first project we'll ever use a laminate product on, which, frankly, we weren't super excited about, but I think we've actually really, at least for me, I'm excited to see how it comes out, because we've considered the product all the way through and made sure that we were approaching it with the right approach to be sure that that product was going to be installed in a way that we could be proud of. And the product that we're using actually answered a lot of our concerns. But then even things like we have this really cool detail around the island where we have this oak top that's going to be on the back. Originally started as this Baltic birch detail, and we kind of proposed this white oak to kind of play with the floor. But you and I were jamming over this little shadow detail, how it sits on the floor. So we'll certainly be posting about that.
Yeah.
But it's these little moments that are, we have the opportunity to improve, and this is a big reason why we have the millwork in house, is to make these micro adjustments. I mean, frankly, you guys are working. I actually saw on the table in the shop is that you have. We were going to do a TrueFig outlet, and they don't offer a 3-gang,
right.
And we didn't want the outlet plate on top of the vanity. And you guys went out and bought a screwless Decora, built a jig for it, and recessed that Decora plate into the side of the vanity, which is awesome. I mean, it looks very similar to a TrueFig.
Yeah.
And that plate will go out with finish and get finished to match. And frankly, you won't. We're talking a fraction of the cost, and you're using standard parts rather than a TrueFig. Yep. So that's what's really what it comes down to for us, is why we have the millwork in house, is to be able to micro improve these things and make these moments really cool. The projects with Walker Architects, and who
we're super excited about working with.
And I think they're equally as excited to see like our process and how we can improve this stuff, which has just been incredibly fun. I totally just lost my train of thought.
But that's the nice thing about, like you said, having control of the shop. We can make these kind of adjustments on the fly. And, we kind of tossed around the outlets were TBD for a long time, because we were looking at different options and how can we pivot from the TrueFig, because they don't make the 3-gang. We've done it before where we've added the switch and the outlet into one receptacle, but that wasn't the goal here. It wasn't going to work here. So ultimately, a lot of people kind of tossed around this idea, and we tried it out, and it works perfect.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's a great low-cost solution. And I say low-cost. There's still a lot of labor involved in it. And, you got the pros and cons. So with the TrueFigs, they are adjustable, right? These ones aren't. So we have to make sure that we're doing the work up front to make sure that it's going to be completely flat and in line with the side of the cabinet. And being that it is, flexible, a two-piece design, there is some movement in there, some flexibility.
Yeah.
But just kind of really making sure we're taking the extra time up front to dial in that depth, so that we're not having any unevenness between the two materials.
Right. Which, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really why we want to make this thing flush anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what'd you guys work on? What'd you guys showcase this week on Revealed?
On Revealed, we actually did the shop built stairs, which the shop team had very little to do with. We did offer some support here and there, but otherwise it was Nick Yost's field team. So Ian and Patrick, and they crushed it. They've been here for a couple weeks now. For me, it was the first time that I had seen a set of stairs being built in the shop, and they had me intrigued since the start. And, they just did these like crazy router jigs to like get the treads of the stairs and the risers of the stairs into the stringers, and the mitered stringer on that front end there. The name of it escapes me, but dude, it was amazing. It was really impressive to watch these guys do that. And
yeah, you guys use a lot of vocabulary in that video. I was like, did he just learn this?
What's horrible is I posted a story this morning, and I couldn't remember what one of the parts that we've just discussed was called. So yeah,
was it the cell or
the well cylinder?
Well cylinder.
Yeah, I was like, the thing right there that's circular, and
well, I think it'd be great to get Nick on the podcast next week if we can steal him out of the field, but just to talk about, the reasons that we did it in the shop. And I know if you guys want to check it out, Revealed, Site Visit and Revealed are on YouTube. Site Visit goes live every Tuesday, Revealed every Wednesday. But you guys can check out what we're talking about with the stairs.
Yeah, Nick drops a ton of knowledge. I basically took a step back and just asked him questions, and he just rifled through them. So I learned a lot. I mean, not all of it was retained, of course, right? Sure. I couldn't remember a well cylinder. But yeah, he drops a lot of knowledge on that.
It's funny. There's a comment in there that, we should speed this thing up 2 to 8 times because it's kind of boring to watch. And
did Doug tell you did the math on that?
He did not.
2.25 minutes.
So it's an 18-minute video, and he wanted it 8 times faster.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's, if I can ask you guys to do anything, hop on there and just let him know that that's probably not a good move. But I do want to send out, if you guys are interested in seeing some of the renderings for our Cambridge project, I'm happy to share them. We've been slowly sharing them on social media, but if you guys want to sneak peek early, what I would ask is screenshot this podcast on iTunes, share it on your story, and make sure you tag NS Builders, and I'll DM you a shot of the rendering that hasn't been posted yet. It's a pretty cool space, and
they're sexy.
Yeah, the renderings came out fantastic.
So we should probably just ask those people how they built that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think Photoshop.
No, but like so that we can build it in real life. Some of these details that we're trying to work out, just see how they did it and copy it.
I like that. With that being said, we'll see you guys next week. Make sure you subscribe on all of your podcast apps where you can download anywhere on the podcast apps. You can also watch this on YouTube. If you guys are watching it on YouTube, make sure you comment below. Let us know what you think. And then reach out to myself at NS Builders.
And I'm at Ken DeCoste.
And if you guys have any questions for a future episode, we'll dig into it. Until then, we'll see you next week.